He didn't step up. I thought he loved me. But I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the miscarriage because the miscarriage ended up saving my life.
To me, as me being one of my best friends, that crosses the line to me. Girl, bye. You, Liz. I've been there for you so much. Disgusting.
And I'm excited to reveal that I'm engaged. And whole face done. Your girl's taken. I'm doing good, but there is a new mass in my stomach. Oh. So I'll be moving forward with like a hysterectomy at some point, but it's not a rush.
So
Beautiful.
Are you engaged?
I am engaged.
Ooh. To
Alec, the other guy that I was talking to when I was on the trip.
Oh!
I had a girlfriend for a whole year.
while you were together?
Yes. When I found out I was pregnant. He didn't step up. I thought he loved me. I moved for him. I moved for another man again. He saw something that was a little weird, like a cyst and a mass and stuff. So he called me and he was like, hey, I think you need to go get a second opinion. Wow. I could have never found out.
Bro.
Oh, bro. Oh, my God.
Fist bump.
Oh, God.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. I did know that I loved you, like had love. It was there. It was just unexpected. But I had already loved someone else too.
Can we stop with this pretending everybody love each other and fakeness? Pedro are saying in the first day, you're a hoe.
Well, I love that you really didn't want to rush into a relationship, so you tried to be a hoe and ended up in 2 relationships.
Yes, I have issues. It's a
very
pattern for
Liz
me.
of you, right?
Yeah.
You then technically weren't even boyfriend-girlfriend before being engaged?
Not really.
Wow.
We had just spent so much time together and he just was always there. Amazing.
Amazing.
Yes. But the problem is he wants it every day, like twice a day. And I'm like, I want to go to bed. I thoroughly enjoy sex. And I don't have a problem talking about sex. I am so open about it. Like,
Oh, Jamal.
I think Courtney want to say something.
I
don't want to say anything.
Is it about
the
this?
first day on DR, Liz come to Sophie and say, me and Jamal so close to each other. And we like, who? How you so close?
So, hold on. I'm going to set these cards down because we're in territory I'm not prepared for.
I feel sick to my stomach. To me, as me being one of my best friends, that crosses the line to me.
Liz, did you have sex with Jamal?
a long, long time ago. But nothing since then. I swear, Kim.
Girl, bye. You, Liz.
Kim did not walk into that tell-all expecting her own son's name to become the center of Liz's story, but that is exactly where the room went. And the second Jamal's name entered the conversation, the whole energy changed. This was not just another cast member asking a messy question, and it was not just another awkward relationship reveal from a franchise built on awkward relationship reveals. This was Kim realizing in real time that someone she considered a close friend may have crossed a line inside her own personal life, and the worst part was not only what happened between Liz and Jamal. The worst part was that Kim seemed to be hearing it in front of everyone, with cameras rolling, while other people on that stage already looked like they knew more than she did. That is why this moment hits harder than a normal tell-all rumor. Liz was not standing there as a single woman explaining one old mistake from years ago. She was sitting on that stage newly engaged to Alec, with a ring on her finger, trying to present her life as if it had finally moved into a stable chapter. But then, almost out of nowhere, the conversation shifted away from the engagement and toward Jamal, Kim's son, and suddenly the question was no longer about who Liz loved now. The question became whether Liz had been honest with the people who were closest to her while she was building this new version of her life. And that is the part that makes the room feel uncomfortable. Kim was not reacting like a stranger. She was reacting like a woman who believed she had been there for Liz, supported her, trusted her, and allowed her into a personal space that most people protect carefully. When a friend becomes part of your life, your home, your family circle, and then a secret comes out involving your child, that changes the meaning of everything that came before it. The flirting Kim said she noticed may have once looked harmless, maybe even easy to ignore, but once the truth started coming out, that same old flirting suddenly looked different. It became a warning sign that Kim says she never thought would turn into something real. The strange thing is that the reveal did not even begin with Kim asking Liz directly. It began in the background, almost like the secret was leaking before anyone was ready to say it out loud. Courtney and Pedro were talking quietly, and Kim heard enough to know her son was being discussed. That small moment matters, because this is where the power in the room begins to shift. Liz is no longer controlling the story. Courtney is not fully controlling it either, because once Kim hears Jamal's name, the secret no longer belongs to the people whispering. It belongs to the person who feels blindsided by it. At first, Courtney does not seem eager to explain everything once the attention turns toward her, and that silence only makes the situation look heavier. A person who is just repeating harmless gossip usually has no problem talking, especially on a tell-all stage where everyone is already expected to spill something. But when Courtney suddenly pulls back, it creates the feeling that this is not just casual cash chatter. It makes the audience wonder what was known before the cameras focused on it, who had already heard the story, and why Kim was apparently not part of that group. That is the kind of detail that keeps viewers locked in, because the story is no longer only about Liz and Jamal. It becomes about who was protecting the secret, who was using it, and who was left out. Then Julia steps in, and her role in the moment is very clear. She pushes the conversation from background gossip into open confrontation. She brings up that Liz had talked about being close to Jamal, and with that, the vague tension becomes specific enough for Kim to react. The room cannot treat it like a random rumor anymore. There is now a direct connection being described, and Kim has to sit there and process what it might mean. That is when the tell-all stops feeling like a normal recap and starts feeling like a public reckoning. Because Kim is not trying to make a storyline out of nothing. She is asking why her son is suddenly being connected to one of her friends in a way that she clearly did not expect. And then comes the direct question. Kim does not dance around it. She asks Liz whether she slept with Jamal. That is the moment where Liz's reaction becomes just as important as her answer. Because before she admits anything, she hesitates. She says she does not think it is right to discuss it unless Jamal is there too, and on one level, that sounds fair. Jamal is part of the situation, and he is not present to speak for himself. But on another level, the timing of that hesitation makes it feel like Liz knows the answer will change the way everyone looks at her. That is why this moment can be read two ways. Maybe Liz does not want to speak on Jamal's behalf, or maybe she does not want to say out loud what everyone is now waiting to hear. That hesitation is where the tension sits. If nothing happened, the answer would be easy. If the story was completely harmless, there would be no need for the room to freeze around the question. But Liz does not immediately shut it down, and the longer she waits, the more the audience understands that Kim's reaction is probably about to get worse. Kim is not asking because she wants drama for the sake of drama. She is asking because she feels like the people around her may know something about her own son that she did not know herself, and that is a very different kind of embarrassment. When Liz finally admits that something happened a long time ago, the damage is already done. Even with the timeline softened, even with the claim that nothing happened since then, the emotional meaning does not disappear. For Liz, it may be something from the past. For Kim, it is happening right now, in front of the entire cast while cameras capture her reaction. That is why the phrase "a long time ago" does not really protect Liz in the moment. It may explain the timeline, but it does not answer the bigger question. Why was Kim not told before she had to hear it like this? That is where the real conflict begins to split the audience. Some viewers will say Liz and Jamal are both adults. And technically, that is true. No one on that stage can erase that basic fact. But other viewers will look at Kim's side and say adulthood does not erase friendship boundaries. When someone is close to you, when they have leaned on you, when they have been welcomed around your family, there are certain lines that feel personal even if they are not written down. Kim's anger comes from that place. She is not just reacting to Liz having a past. She is reacting to the feeling that Liz entered a space of trust and then kept a secret that involved Kim's son. And that is why Jamal's absence becomes such a heavy part of the scene. He is central to the reveal, but he is not there to answer anything. He is not there to explain whether Kim should have known, whether he kept it quiet, whether it meant anything, or whether it was just something he thought did not need to be discussed. That missing voice leaves the whole stage stuck in an incomplete truth. Liz has answered enough to confirm the secret, but not enough to close the story. Kim has reacted strongly enough to show the friendship may be damaged, but she still does not have every answer. Alec, sitting somewhere inside this larger mess as Liz's fiancé, becomes another question waiting in the background. Did he already know, or is he finding out the same way everyone else is? That question matters because Liz did not arrive at this tell-all as someone with nothing to lose. She arrived with a new engagement, and that engagement changes the weight of every reveal. If Alec knew about Jamal, then the question becomes whether he had already accepted more than the audience realized. If Alec did not know, then the tell-all is not just embarrassing for Kim, it is also a warning sign for the future of Liz's relationship with him. A ring can make a relationship look settled, but it cannot erase unanswered history, and this stage is proving that Liz's past is not staying neatly behind her. What makes this opening so powerful is that it does not ask the viewer to understand every relationship right away. It gives them one emotional problem they can feel instantly. Can trust survive when a friend finds out a secret involving her own son in front of everyone? From there, every detail becomes more loaded. Courtney going quiet looks suspicious. Julia speaking up looks deliberate. Kim asking directly feels unavoidable. Liz hesitating feels revealing. Jamal not being there feels unfinished. Alec being engaged to Liz makes the whole thing feel even more unstable. By the end of this first part, the audience should not feel like they have the full story yet. They should feel like the tell-all has only exposed the first layer. Liz's admission about Jamal is shocking, but it is not standing alone. It is sitting beside Alec's engagement, Via's unfinished feelings, and Jason's painful history, and that is what makes the situation bigger than one secret. Kim's reaction opens the door, but once that door is open, the question becomes much harder to ignore. Was this just one private mistake that finally became public, or was this the first visible crack in a much larger pattern that Liz had carried onto that stage with her? Before Liz ever had to answer for Jamal, she walked into that tell-all trying to sell a very different story, and on the surface, it looked like the kind of update people are supposed to celebrate. She had a ring, she had a new fiancé, and she was presenting herself as someone who had finally moved past the chaos and found a man who was ready to choose her. But the strange thing about that moment is that the engagement did not feel like a clean ending. It felt like the start of a much bigger question. Because the second Alec's name entered the conversation, the timeline around Liz's love life started looking less like a fresh start and more like another complicated chapter that had not been fully explained yet. Liz did not just arrive with happy news. She arrived with a relationship that already had shadows around it, and that is why the ring matters so much. A ring is supposed to make a relationship look solid. It is supposed to tell the room that the confusion is over, the decision has been made, and the person wearing it has moved into a more serious phase of life. But for Liz, that ring immediately raised more questions than answers, because Alec was not introduced as someone who had been clearly standing beside her through a simple love story. He was introduced as the man connected to her, while another man, Via, was also part of the picture, and that alone made the engagement feel less secure than Liz seemed to want it to look. That is where the audience starts looking at Alec differently. He is not just the new fiancé sitting at the end of the story. He is the person who chose to move forward after a period where Liz had gone on a trip, built a connection with Via, and later came back into his life. Maybe that makes Alec patient. Maybe it makes him trusting. Maybe it makes him someone who believes love can survive a messy beginning. But it also raises the uncomfortable possibility that Alec may have accepted things he was not fully comfortable with because he wanted to keep Liz close. And that possibility hangs over every part of the engagement reveal. Liz's explanation does not make the timeline easier. She says Alec was the other man she had been talking to during that period, and even that phrasing makes the engagement sound complicated before anyone has to say much else. A fiancé is usually introduced as the person, not the other person. And while that may sound like a small detail, in a tell-all setting, small details are exactly where the bigger story starts leaking out. The way someone describes a relationship can reveal how settled it really is, and Liz describing Alec in connection to another romantic situation makes it feel like he was part of a triangle before he ever became the man with the ring. The deeper issue is not simply that Liz had a past. Everyone on that stage has a past, because that is basically the franchise business model, somehow still legal and profitable. The issue is that Liz's past seems to keep running into her present before anyone has time to understand where one relationship ended and the next one actually began. With Alec, that becomes even more noticeable because Liz later explains that they were not officially dating before they got engaged. That detail changes the whole emotional weight of the announcement. Suddenly, the audience is not just asking whether Alec loves Liz. They are asking what foundation the engagement is standing on. There is a difference between spending time with someone and building a relationship clear enough to support marriage. Spending time can create comfort. It can create closeness. It can create the feeling that someone is always there when life becomes difficult. But marriage asks for more than presence. It asks for clarity, honesty, timing, and a shared understanding of what both people are actually agreeing to. So when Liz says they were not officially dating before becoming engaged, it creates a quiet kind of tension, because the relationship appears to have skipped a step that usually helps people figure out whether they are ready for the next one. That does not mean Alec is automatically making a bad choice, and it does not mean Liz is automatically wrong for saying yes, but it does mean the engagement cannot be treated like a simple happy update. There are too many unresolved details around it. Alec knew Liz was going on the Dominican Republic trip, and according to the way the story is presented, he did not want her to go. That matters because it shows he was not completely relaxed about the situation from the beginning. He understood there was risk, but he also understood that trying to stop Liz might create resentment. So instead of drawing a hard line, he let the situation play out, then accepted her when she came back. That one choice says a lot about Alec's position. He may be trying to love Liz without controlling her, which can sound mature on the surface, but there is another side to it. Sometimes people avoid setting boundaries because they are afraid that asking for too much will push the other person away. That fear can look like patience from the outside, but inside the relationship, it can create a dangerous imbalance. One person gets to explore, test, return, and be forgiven, while the other person waits and hopes that being understanding will eventually be rewarded with loyalty. If that is what happened with Alec, then his calmness may not be as simple as it seems, and that is what makes the engagement feel so uneasy. Alec is not being shown as a man who walked into a clear relationship with a clean beginning. He is being shown as someone who was already emotionally invested while Liz was still navigating another connection. Then, after that trip, after the confusion, he becomes the fiancé. That is a major jump. It asks the audience to accept that all the uncertainty somehow turned into commitment quickly enough for a proposal, and when a relationship moves that fast after a messy period, people naturally start wondering whether the commitment is built on love, relief, fear, or the need to feel safe after chaos. For Liz, that part may be especially important. Her history with Jason, which comes up later, includes betrayal, pain, and a major emotional collapse during a serious personal period. After someone goes through something like that, it is not strange for them to want stability. It is not strange for them to want someone who shows up, someone who stays, someone who feels dependable after the last person failed them. Alec may represent that kind of stability for Liz. He may be the man who was there, the man who waited, the man who did not disappear when things were complicated. But the question is whether stability chosen quickly is the same thing as stability built slowly. That question becomes even harder once Via enters the story, because Alec's engagement does not exist in a vacuum. Liz did not simply go on a trip and return with no emotional consequence. There were feelings involved. There was a connection strong enough that it still matters at the tell-all. So before the audience even sees the full Via moment, the engagement already has a pressure point. Did Alec know how deep that connection went? Did Liz tell him everything? Or only enough for him to accept the version of the story that was easiest to move past? And even if Alec did know, did he accept it because he truly made peace with it, or because he believed keeping Liz was worth swallowing the discomfort? That is where the ring starts to look less like proof and more like a question mark. It proves Alec proposed or accepted a future with Liz, but it does not prove the foundation is settled. It does not prove every conversation happened. It does not prove every wound is closed. It does not prove the people around them understand the same timeline. In fact, the tell-all begins pulling the opposite direction. Every new detail makes the engagement look more exposed, because the stage keeps producing people who have a claim on Liz's recent emotional life. The audience is now watching two stories at the same time. One story is the version Liz is trying to present, where Alec is her fiancé and she has moved forward. The other story is the one the stage keeps revealing, where Alec is connected to a timeline involving Via, later Jamal, and older wounds from Jason. That split is what keeps the tension alive. Viewers are not just waiting to hear whether Liz and Alec are happy, they are waiting to see whether Alec's version of the relationship matches the version everyone else is about to hear. And the most uncomfortable part is that Alec may already know some of it. If he does, then the story becomes about how much he is willing to accept. If he does not, then the story becomes about whether the tell-all is forcing him to process private information in public. Either way, he is placed in a difficult position. He has to remain connected to Liz while her relationship history becomes the central topic of the room, and the more the cast talks, the more his future with her starts being judged by people who are not inside the relationship but can clearly see the cracks around it. That is why this part of the tell-all is quieter than the Jamal confrontation, but almost just as important. The Jamal reveal is loud because Kim reacts strongly and the betrayal feels immediate. The Alec engagement is tense in a different way because it looks calm at first, then slowly becomes unstable as the details stack up. Liz says she is engaged, but then the audience learns Alec did not want the trip, Via was emotionally involved, Liz and Alec were not officially dating before the engagement, and the ring now has to survive a room full of unfinished history. By the time the focus starts shifting toward Via, the engagement no longer feels like a safe place in the story. It feels like something being tested from every direction. Alec may be the fiancé, but he is not the only man attached to the choices Liz made before that ring appeared. And once Via comes onto the stage, the emotional pressure changes again. Because it is one thing to hear that Liz had a trip romance in the past. It is another thing to watch the man from that trip walk into the room, hug her, and bring feelings with him that make Alec's engagement look even less simple than it did before. The moment Via walks onto the stage, the whole meaning of Liz's engagement starts to shift again. Because until that point, Alec could still be seen as the man she chose after everything else was finished. But once Via is there in front of her, once Liz reacts with that warm excitement, and the hug lasts long enough for the room to feel it, the story no longer looks like a clean before and after. It starts to look like Alec may be standing at the end of a chapter that was never fully closed. That hug matters because it is not just a polite greeting between two people who barely meant anything to each other. Liz looks happy to see him, and Via does not come in with cold distance either. There is comfort there, there is familiarity there, and there is enough visible emotion for the audience to understand that whatever happened on that trip did not vanish just because Liz came home and accepted a ring from Alec. It is the kind of moment that makes everyone watching quietly ask the same uncomfortable question. If this is just the past, why does it still feel so present? And that is where Alec's engagement becomes harder to defend as simple. Liz is not single on that stage. She is not casually dating and trying to figure out which direction to go. She is engaged, which means every emotional reaction she has toward Via is now being measured against the promise she has made to Alec. A hug that might have seemed sweet in another situation suddenly feels loaded. A smile that might have seemed harmless suddenly looks complicated. Even the way Liz describes her feelings starts to matter more, because the person watching from the outside is not only seeing an old fling, they are seeing a fiance's future being placed beside another man's unresolved emotions. The room then gets even heavier when the tell-all brings up Via's private confession from the trip. He had said he fell in love with Liz, but Liz apparently did not know that until the clip is shown. That reveal changes the mood immediately, because it means the connection was not only physical, not only playful, and not only a vacation escape. At least from Via's side, it had become something serious enough for him to describe it as love. That is a major shift, because love is not a small word inside a story that already has an engagement sitting in the background. Liz's reaction is important because she seems genuinely surprised, and that surprise creates two different readings at the same time. On one hand, it makes Via's feelings look more private, like he was carrying something that he had not fully given to her while they were together. On the other hand, it raises the question of how much Liz understood about the emotional weight of the connection while it was happening. Did she think they were just enjoying the moment? Or did she know there was something deeper forming but avoid saying it out loud? The tell-all does not fully answer that, and that is exactly why the tension keeps building. Then Liz admits that she also had love for Via, and that is the point where the engagement to Alec begins to look even more fragile. Because now this is not just a story about Via having feelings that Liz did not return. This is a story where both people acknowledge that something emotional existed between them even while Alec was already part of Liz's life. That detail makes the timeline much harder to ignore. Liz may not have planned to fall for someone on that trip, and she may not have intended for things to become serious. But once she admits that love was there, the audience has to ask what Alec was supposed to do with that information. That is the uncomfortable part about emotional overlap. It is not always as visible as cheating, and it is not always easy to define, but it can still damage trust because it creates a second emotional world outside the relationship someone is trying to protect. Liz may have wanted freedom after everything she went through with Jason. She may have wanted a break from commitment, pressure, disappointment, and heartbreak. But wanting freedom does not erase the effect her choices had on Via, and it does not erase the pressure those choices now place on Alec. A person can be honest about having complicated feelings and still be responsible for the confusion those feelings create. Via does not seem interested in attacking Liz, and that makes the moment more complicated than a simple confrontation. He does not sit there throwing blame at her or trying to turn the room against her. He appears controlled, maybe even protective of her in some way, and he says he understood the situation. But that does not mean there is no hurt. Sometimes the person who says they are fine is the one trying hardest not to look exposed, especially when they are sitting near someone who is now engaged to somebody else. Via's calmness can look mature, but it can also look like pride, like he is trying not to show how uncomfortable the moment really is. And the more Liz talks about Alec, the harder Via's position becomes. He is sitting there as the man who admitted he had real feelings, while Liz's future is being discussed with another man. That is not an easy seat to be in, even if he knew what he was getting into. It is one thing to tell yourself a situation is casual while it is happening. It is another thing to sit on a stage later and hear the person you cared about talk about the engagement that came after you. That creates a kind of quiet humiliation that does not need yelling to be felt. But just when the scene seems like it might stay soft, Julia cuts through the polite version of events and challenges the idea that everyone is fine. Her role here is not subtle. She is the person who refuses to let the room cover everything with friendly smiles and careful answers. She pushes against the performance of peace, and whether viewers like her delivery or not, her interruption forces the audience to look at the situation more critically. Maybe everyone is trying to act mature. Maybe they are all trying to avoid making the moment worse. Or maybe they are all avoiding the part that actually matters, which is that people were hurt and nobody wants to fully sit with that. This is also where Via's image becomes less clear. The script suggests that there were claims about him being more of a player, and even Via does not fully deny that kind of reputation. That complicates his love confession, because now the audience has to decide how much weight to give his emotions. Was Via a man who unexpectedly caught real feelings, or was he someone used to casual attention who still wanted to look sincere once the cameras were rolling? Both possibilities can exist close enough to keep the story unstable. He may have been casual at first and still developed real feelings later. He may have liked the attention and still been affected when Liz chose someone else. Human behavior loves being inconvenient like that. For Liz, this part of the tell-all exposes one of the main contradictions in her story. She may have wanted to avoid jumping into another serious relationship, but the result was still emotionally serious. She may have wanted to have fun, but Via walked away saying he had fallen in love. She may have returned to Alec and moved toward an engagement, but she still admits there was love with Via too. That does not make the situation easy to label, which is why it works so well as a commentary moment. Viewers are not just watching a romance recap. They are watching a woman try to explain how she ended up attached to more than one emotional story at the same time. The question now becomes whether honesty is enough. Liz being honest about having feelings for Via may seem better than denying it, but honesty after the fact does not automatically repair the emotional mess created before it. Alec still has to live with what that honesty means. Via still has to sit with the fact that his feelings were real enough to be shown, but not enough to become the relationship Liz chose. And Liz still has to face the possibility that her search for freedom after Jason created a new set of emotional consequences she did not fully control. This is why the engagement starts feeling less like a resolution and more like something being tested from every angle. Alec is the fiance, but Via is the man whose feelings make the engagement feel less clean. Jason is the past that helps explain why Liz may have been searching for safety and excitement at the same time. Jamal is the secret waiting to turn romantic confusion into friendship betrayal, and Liz is in the middle of all of it, trying to move forward while the tell-all keeps pulling every unfinished piece back into the room. By the end of this section, the audience should not feel like Via is the final problem. They should feel like he is the warning before the bigger collapse. His presence proves that Liz's engagement did not happen in a vacuum. His confession proves that the trip had emotional weight. Liz's admission proves that the feelings were not one-sided. Julia's challenge proves that the room is not willing to accept a neat version of events, and Alec's unseen pressure proves that every warm moment between Liz and Via now lands differently because there is a ring involved. So when the story prepares to move away from Via, it should not feel like the triangle has been solved. It should feel like the triangle has exposed the weakness in the foundation. Alec may still be Liz's fiance, and Via may not be openly fighting for her, but the audience has now seen enough to understand that the engagement is carrying more emotional baggage than it first appeared. And just when the room seems to have survived the awkwardness of Via's feelings, another name rises from the background, one that shifts the entire conflict away from romance and into betrayal. Because the next person hurt by Liz's hidden history is not another man from a trip. It is Kim, the friend who never expected her own son to become part of the story. By the time Kim hears Jamal's name, the tell-all has already stopped feeling like a simple relationship update. Liz has already walked in with Alec's ring. Via has already brought old feelings back into the room. The audience has already been given enough pieces to understand that Liz's love life is not moving in one straight line. But the Jamal reveal hits differently because this is no longer just about romance. This is where the story leaves dating drama and walks straight into friendship betrayal. Kim was not just another cast member sitting there waiting for gossip. She was someone Liz had leaned on during a painful period. She was someone who had been part of Liz's support system when things were heavy, personal, and emotionally raw. That matters because once Jamal's name comes up, Kim is not reacting as a random viewer. She is reacting as a friend who suddenly realizes that something may have happened inside her own family circle, and she was not told. That kind of shock does not need screaming to feel serious. The silence alone tells you how badly the room has changed. At first, the secret does not come out directly. It starts in the background, almost like the stage itself is trying to leak the truth before anyone is ready to own it. Courtney and Pedro are talking quietly, and Kim catches enough to know that her son is being discussed. It is a small moment, but it changes the entire direction of the conversation. Just seconds before, the focus was on Liz's engagement, her chemistry with Alec, and the unresolved feelings with Via. Then suddenly, Kim hears Jamal's name, and the room gets tighter. Everyone can feel that this is not just another playful rumor. Courtney's reaction makes it even more uncomfortable. She had been involved in the side conversation, but once attention turns toward her, she does not rush to explain. She hesitates. She pulls back. And that hesitation creates more suspicion than a straight answer would have. If it was nothing, why not say that immediately? If it was harmless, why not clear it up? Instead, the quietness makes it feel like people on that stage already know something Kim does not know, which is exactly why the moment becomes so personal for her. Then Julia steps in and pushes the conversation into the open. She brings up that Liz had spoken about being close to Jamal, and suddenly the vague whisper becomes something everyone can look at directly. That is the point where the room stops circling around the issue. Kim now has enough to ask the question herself, and you can feel how different her energy is. She is not asking because she wants a random piece of gossip. She is asking because the name involved is her son, and the person being questioned is supposed to be her friend. That detail is what makes the scene heavy. If Liz had a past connection with someone unrelated to Kim, it would still be awkward because Alec is now her fiance. But Jamal is not just another man from Liz's past. He is Kim's son. That makes the emotional rules different. Whether people agree with Kim or not, it is easy to understand why she feels blindsided. Friendship often comes with invisible boundaries, and one of those boundaries is family. You do not always need someone to say the rule out loud to understand that crossing into that space without honesty can leave damage behind. Kim even admits she had noticed flirting between Liz and Jamal before, but she did not think it had gone beyond that. That line is important because it shows this was not coming from absolutely nowhere. Kim had seen something, but she had explained it away. Maybe she thought it was harmless. Maybe she trusted Liz too much to imagine anything deeper. Maybe she did not want to believe that a friend she had supported would keep something like that from her. And now, with everyone watching, that old flirting suddenly looks different in her mind. What once felt like a small thing now feels like evidence she missed. When Kim finally asks Liz directly whether she slept with Jamal, the moment becomes impossible to avoid. Liz does not immediately give the clean answer everyone is waiting for. Instead, she says she does not think it is right to talk about it without Jamal there. On one level, that answer can be seen as fair. Jamal is part of the situation and he is not present to explain his side. But in that room, at that exact moment, it also sounds like delay. It sounds like Liz knows the answer is going to hurt Kim, and she is trying to slow down the damage before it lands. That is why her hesitation matters so much. The question is already direct. Kim is already upset. The cast is already watching her face. The audience already knows something is coming. And the longer Liz waits, the more obvious it becomes that this is not a misunderstanding she can easily shut down. If nothing happened, there would be no reason to avoid it. If the situation was harmless, there would be no reason for her expression to change the way it does. The pressure builds because the answer is not only about the past, it is about what the past says about Liz right now, as she sits there engaged to Alec. When Liz finally admits that something happened a long time ago, the timing does not save her. Saying it was a long time ago may explain when it happened, but it does not answer why Kim did not know. That is the part Kim cannot move past. For Liz, the admission may be about an old connection. For Kim, it is a fresh betrayal because she is finding out in public in front of people who may have known before she did. That is a different kind of hurt. It is not only the act itself, it is the secrecy around it, the embarrassment of learning it on stage, and the feeling that the friendship was not respected enough for honesty. This is where viewers will split. And that split is exactly why the moment keeps pulling people in. Some people will say Liz and Jamal were both adults. And technically, they are right. No one is claiming they were not grown people making their own choices. But another group of viewers will say that adulthood does not erase loyalty. It does not erase the fact that Kim considered Liz a close friend. It does not erase the fact that Jamal is her son. And it does not erase the discomfort of realizing that someone close to you kept something personal from you while continuing to sit in your life like nothing had happened. Kim's anger is not just about control. It is about trust. She believes she knew the relationship she had with Liz. She believes she understood the line between casual flirting and something serious. She believes she had been there for Liz in moments that mattered. Then, in one public scene, that belief gets shaken. That is why her reaction feels less like reality TV theatrics and more like someone being humiliated in real time. She is not calmly processing a story. She is trying to understand why she had to learn this with everyone else watching. The power in the room also changes. Until now, Liz has been the person explaining her life. She explains the engagement. She explains the past. She explains the trip. She explains feeling. But now, Kim takes control of the emotional center of the stage. Liz is no longer only the person who was hurt by Jason, or confused by Via, or chosen by Alec. She is now the person being confronted by someone else's pain. That shift is what keeps this part from feeling repetitive. The story is no longer asking what happened to Liz. It is asking what Liz's choices did to someone who trusted her. And then there is Jamal, the missing piece sitting over the whole scene without even being there. His absence makes everything feel unfinished. If he was part of this, why is Liz the only one answering? Did he think Kim did not need to know? Did he hide it because he knew it would hurt her? Did he and Liz both decide it was better left unsaid? The tell-all gives Kim an admission, but not a full explanation, because Jamal is not present to explain his role. That missing voice keeps the audience waiting, because the story cannot fully close until he is confronted too. Alec's position also becomes harder to ignore. He is Liz's fiancé, and now he has to exist inside a story that includes Via's feelings and Jamal's secret. The question is whether Alec already knew about Jamal before the tell-all. If he did, then viewers may wonder how much he has already accepted. If he did not, then this stage has just placed him in a painful position because his engagement is being tested by information he may not have been prepared to hear. Either way, the ring does not protect the relationship from the questions being raised around it. It only makes those questions louder. That is why this part lands as the real emotional fallout. Via made the engagement look complicated. Jason explained some of Liz's pain. Alec represented the future she wanted, but Kim represents the cost of the secrets around that future. She is the one sitting there with the most personal reaction. Because this is not only about who Liz dated or loved or moved on from, it is about whether Liz understood the difference between making private choices and keeping painful secrets from someone who believed they were close. By the end of this section, the tell-all has two damaged relationships sitting in the same room. Alec's engagement now feels less secure because Liz's past keeps becoming public in pieces. Kim's friendship with Liz may be damaged because the secret involved her son and was hidden from her. And Jamal, even without appearing, becomes one of the most important people in the entire story because his side is still missing. The question now is no longer whether Liz can explain what happened. The bigger question is whether Liz is actually moving into a new life with Alec, or whether the same blurred lines that hurt Kim are following her straight into the engagement. By the end of this tell-all, the biggest question is not just whether Liz crossed a line with Jamal, and it is not just whether Kim had a right to feel hurt. The bigger question is whether this whole night exposed one isolated mistake, or whether it showed a pattern that has been following Liz from one relationship into the next. Because when you step back from the shock of the Jamal reveal, the story becomes much larger than one secret. Jason, Via, Alec, Kim, and Jamal all represent a different part of the same emotional mess. And every time one person is brought into the conversation, the meaning of the next relationship changes. That is what makes this tell-all feel so unstable. It does not give the audience one clean problem to judge. It gives them several unfinished problems stacked on top of each other. Jason represents the painful chapter Liz says she survived. Via represents the connection that started as something lighter but turned emotionally serious. Alec represents the future she is trying to build now. Kim represents the friendship that may have been damaged by secrecy. And Jamal, even without being on stage, becomes the missing voice everyone now wants to hear from, because he is tied to the biggest public fallout of the night. To understand why Liz's choices landed the way they did, the story has to go back to Jason, because that part of the tell-all explains why some viewers may still feel empathy for her even while questioning her decisions. Liz described a relationship where she found out Jason had another girlfriend while she was also finding out she was pregnant. That alone is a painful combination, but the situation became even heavier when she later had a miscarriage and said Jason did not show up for her in the way she needed. That is not a small emotional wound. That is the kind of experience that can make a person feel abandoned at the exact moment they needed someone to be steady. And then there is the health scare connected to that period. Liz explained that after the miscarriage, doctors noticed something concerning, including a cyst or mass, and that discovery pushed her toward getting more medical attention. That part of the story should not be treated like gossip, because it is serious and personal. It gives the audience a reason to understand why Liz may have come into this season carrying fear, urgency, grief, and a need to feel alive again. When someone goes through betrayal, loss, and a health scare close together, it can change the way they make decisions. It can make life feel shorter. It can make attention feel comforting. It can make stability feel urgent. But understanding pain is not the same thing as excusing every choice that follows it. That is where the tell-all becomes complicated. Liz's past with Jason may explain why she wanted something different, but it does not erase what happened with Via, Alec, Kim, or Jamal. It simply adds context. It shows why Liz may have been chasing connection so quickly, and why the Dominican Republic trip may have felt like a chance to feel wanted without immediately locking herself into another serious commitment. The problem is that feelings do not always follow the plan people make for themselves, because apparently emotions did not receive the memo. That is where Via becomes important. The trip may have been framed as freedom, but the tell-all makes it clear that the connection with Via was not weightless. Via said he fell in love with Liz, and Liz admitted there was love there too. That confession changes everything, because it means the trip was not just a simple break from real life. It created a real emotional attachment, and once Alec is sitting in the story as Liz's fiancé, That attachment cannot be brushed aside as harmless fun. Even if Liz never planned to fall for Via, the result still created pressure around the engagement she now wants everyone to accept as her future. Alec is left in one of the hardest positions in the whole story because he is the person attached to Liz's next chapter while the tell-all keeps pulling pieces of her recent past into the room. He may represent safety for Liz. He may be the man who was there, the man who waited, the man who did not disappear when things became complicated. But safety is difficult to build when the foundation begins with unclear timing, unresolved feelings, and questions about what was fully known before the engagement. A ring can show commitment, but it cannot automatically clean up the confusion that existed before it was placed on someone's hand. That is why Alec's calmness is so difficult to read. Maybe he is secure enough to accept that Liz had a messy path before choosing him. Maybe he knows more than the audience realizes. Maybe he made peace with Via, with the trip, and with the complicated timeline because he believes the relationship is worth it. But there is also another possibility. And it is the one that keeps the story tense. Maybe Alec has been accepting things because he fears losing Liz. Maybe his patience is not just strength, but also a way of avoiding the harder conversations that would force both of them to look directly at what this relationship was built on. Then, Jamal shifts everything again. Because the issue stops being only about romantic confusion and becomes about trust outside the relationship. With Via, the audience can debate whether Liz was emotionally messy, whether Via knew what he was getting into, and whether Alec should be worried. But with Jamal, Kim becomes the person most visibly hurt, and that changes the emotional center of the story. Kim's pain is not about wanting to control two adults, it is about feeling blindsided by a friend. She believed Liz was close to her. She believed she had supported Liz. She knew there may have been flirting, but she did not believe it had gone further. That is why Kim's reaction matters so much. She shows the cost of secrecy. She shows that friendship has boundaries even when nobody writes them down. She shows that support does not mean a person has to accept every hidden choice after the fact. If Liz and Jamal were both adults, that explains one part of the situation, but it does not answer the question Kim is really asking. Why was this hidden from me? Why did I have to hear it here? Why did other people seem to know enough to whisper while I was the one left reacting in public? And Jamal's absence keeps that wound open. Liz admits something happened a long time ago and says nothing happened since then. But Jamal is not there to explain what it meant, why it was kept quiet, whether Kim was ever supposed to know, or whether Alec had been told. That missing side prevents the story from fully closing. It leaves the audience with an admission, but not a full account. It leaves Kim with confirmation, but not clarity. It leaves Alec in the background of a question that could directly affect his engagement. And it leaves viewers waiting to see whether Jamal will eventually have to answer for his part too. So by the time the dust settles, the tell-all has not only exposed Liz's romantic past, it has exposed how many people are emotionally tied to her unfinished decisions. Jason hurt her, and that pain matters. Via cared for her, and that connection matters. Alec chose her, and his future with her matters. Kim trusted her, and that trust may now be broken. Jamal was involved, but his side is still missing. That is why this does not feel like a simple scandal with one clean winner and one clean villain. It feels like a chain reaction, where every relationship reveals something the last one left unresolved. The central question now becomes whether Liz sees these events as separate chapters, or whether she understands how connected they look from the outside. She may see Jason as the past, Via as the trip, Alec as the future, Kim as a friendship problem, and Jamal as something old that should not define her now. But the tell-all places all of it on the same stage, and once that happens, the audience starts seeing a pattern. Fast attachment, emotional overlap, unclear boundaries, secrets surfacing too late, people being hurt after they thought they understood where they stood. That does not mean Liz cannot move forward. It does not mean her engagement is doomed. It does not mean Kim and Liz can never repair their friendship. But it does mean that moving forward requires more than saying the past is the past. Alec needs clarity, not just commitment. Kim needs honesty, not just an explanation after the secret is already exposed. Via needs to be treated as someone whose feelings were real, even if Liz did not choose him. And Jamal needs to answer for his own role, because Liz should not be the only person carrying that part of the story while he remains absent from the conversation. The most powerful ending to this tell-all is not that Liz walked in with a ring and everything fell apart. It is that Liz walked in with a ring, and by the end, the ring meant something different. At first, it looked like proof that she had finally chosen a stable future. After the reveals, it looked more like a symbol sitting in the middle of unresolved history. Alec was no longer just the fiance. He became the person standing at the edge of every choice the stage had just exposed. Kim was no longer just the supportive friend. She became the person asking why trust had been broken. And Jamal, even without being there, became the missing answer everyone will want next. That is why this tell-all leaves the audience with tension instead of closure. Liz has survived real pain, but survival does not automatically create clean boundaries. She may want peace, but peace cannot be built while old secrets keep walking into the room. She may want Alec to be her future, but the future will only hold if the past is handled honestly. And after this night, the real question is not whether Liz can explain what happened. The real question is whether she can stop carrying unfinished emotional chapters into every new beginning.